The train was late, its usual punctual rhythm disrupted by some unseen delay. The platform buzzed with muted frustration, impatient commuters checking their phones, glancing at the overhead clock, or pacing in small, futile circles. I stood near the edge, my hands stuffed into my coat pockets, the early autumn chill biting at my exposed skin. A deep breath escaped me, visible in the crisp air as I leaned back against the pillar and waited. I noticed him before he noticed me. He was tall, his frame lithe but sturdy, dressed in dark jeans and a simple gray sweatshirt. A backpack hung off one shoulder, worn but functional, and a paperback was clutched in his hand. He looked different from the usual crowd, a little too composed, as if he didn't belong to the restless chaos surrounding us. His dark hair fell just past his ears, curling slightly at the ends, and his sharp jawline caught the fading sunlight. I was still watching him when he turned his head. Our eyes met, and for a brief moment the noisy platform seemed to quiet. He didn't look away immediately, his gaze steady, inquisitive. There was no awkwardness in his expression, no discomfort, just a quiet curiosity that made my stomach flip. I broke the connection first, turning my gaze back to the tracks. The train arrived a few minutes later, and I stepped into the nearest car, my thoughts still lingering on the stranger. The doors hissed shut, and I found an empty seat near the window. It wasn't long before he entered too, his eyes scanning the car until they landed on me. He didn't hesitate, weaving through the rows and sitting down in the seat opposite mine. It felt deliberate, intentional. My heart beat faster as I glanced at him, unsure whether to speak or stay quiet. He set his backpack on the floor and opened his book, the paperback cracking softly in the hushed space. But every so often his gaze flicked upward, meeting mine for just a second before returning to the pages. "Long day?" His voice broke the silence between us. It was calm, unhurried, like the steady flow of a river. "Something like that," I replied, caught off guard by how easily he'd bridged the gap. "You?" "Not long," he said, closing the book and leaning back in his seat. "Just complicated." I raised an eyebrow. "Complicated how?" He shrugged, a small, self-deprecating smile tugging at his lips. "Sometimes life just is, you know?" I nodded, understanding more than I wanted to admit. The train jerked forward, and we both shifted with the motion, our knees briefly brushing under the small table between us. The contact was fleeting, but it sent a strange warmth through me. His eyes met mine again, and for the first time, I noticed the faintest hint of color in them. Hazel, flecked with green. "I'm Alex, by the way," he said, extending a hand across the table. "Ryan," I replied, taking it. His grip was firm, his skin warm against mine. The conversation flowed easily after that. We talked about the little things, work, the train delays, the peculiar charm of the city in autumn. He had a way of drawing me out, his questions thoughtful, his attention unwavering. It felt like he was genuinely interested, not just filling the silence. The train rocked gently as it sped along, and for a moment, it felt like we were the only two people in the world. When the announcement came for my stop, I felt a pang of disappointment. I stood reluctantly, gathering my things as Alex watched me with a quiet intensity. "Maybe I'll see you around," he said, his voice soft but steady. "Maybe," I replied, forcing a smile. But as I stepped off the train and into the cool evening air, I couldn't help but glance back. He was still there, his gaze following me through the window until the train disappeared down the tracks. I thought that would be the end of it, a fleeting connection, a brief moment of intrigue on an otherwise ordinary day. But a week later, I saw him again. It was a late afternoon train this time, the sun dipping low on the horizon, casting golden light through the car windows. I'd barely taken my seat when I heard his voice. "Mind if I join you?" I looked up to see Alex standing there, a small smile playing on his lips. My heart leapt in my chest, and I nodded, motioning to the seat across from me. He slid in easily, setting his backpack on the floor and leaning forward slightly, his elbows resting on the table. "Fancy seeing you again," he said, his tone light but teasing. "Yeah," I replied, trying not to smile too much. "You stalking me now?" He chuckled, shaking his head. "Just lucky, I guess." The conversation picked up where it had left off as if no time had passed, but there was a new undercurrent to it now, a tension that hadn't been there before. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it was palpable, like an unspoken question hanging in the air between us. The train swayed gently, and once again, our knees brushed under the table. This time, neither of us moved. When my stop came, I hesitated, my hand hovering over the strap of my bag. Alex noticed, his brow furrowing slightly as he looked up at me. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said quickly, standing up and slinging my bag over my shoulder. It was good seeing you again." "You too," he said, his voice quieter now. "Take care, Ryan." I nodded, stepping off the train and into the fading light. But as I walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd left something unfinished. Another week passed, and I couldn't stop thinking about him. Every time I boarded the train, I scanned the cars, my heart leaping at the possibility of seeing him again. It was ridiculous, I knew. We barely knew each other, and yet something about him lingered in my mind. The easy way he smiled, the warmth in his voice, the way he seemed to see right through me without making me feel exposed. It was late one evening when it happened. The train was nearly empty, the city's lights blurring into streaks against the dark windows as we sped through the night. I was lost in thought, staring at my reflection in the glass, when a familiar voice broke the silence. "Is this seat taken?" I turned to see Alex standing in the aisle, his hands in his pockets, his expression soft but cautious. My heart skipped a beat, and I shook my head, gesturing to the seat across from me. He slid in, setting his bag down and leaning back, his eyes meeting mine with that same quiet intensity. "Late night?" he asked, his voice low, almost tentative. "Something like that," I replied, my lips curving into a faint smile. "You?" "Just needed to clear my head," he said, glancing out the window. "Sometimes the train feels calmer at night." I nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. The usual hustle and bustle of the commute had faded, replaced by a quiet stillness that felt almost intimate. The faint hum of the train filled the space between us, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. "I'm glad I ran into you," Alex said suddenly, his voice softer now. "I was starting to think I'd imagined you." I laughed lightly, though my chest tightened at the sincerity in his tone. "I've been here. Maybe you were looking in the wrong places." "Maybe," he said, his gaze lingering on me. "Or maybe I was just waiting for the right moment." The air between us shifted, the tension from our previous encounters returning, stronger this time. It wasn't uncomfortable, but it was undeniable, like a current pulling us closer together. I felt my pulse quicken, my palms growing damp as I searched for something to say. "You're hard to forget, you know," Alex said, his voice so quiet I almost didn't hear him. I looked up, my breath catching at the way he was watching me. His expression was open, vulnerable in a way that made my chest ache. I wanted to say something, to tell him that he'd been on my mind too, that I hadn't stopped thinking about him since the moment we'd met. But the words felt too heavy, too raw, and they stuck in my throat. The train jolted slightly, the motion breaking the moment. Alex glanced down, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Sorry," he said, leaning back in his seat. "Didn't mean to make things weird." "You didn't," I said quickly, my voice firmer than I expected. "I mean, it's not weird. Not to me." He looked up, his eyes meeting mine again. For a moment, neither of us spoke, the unspoken tension stretching between us like a taut string. And then, slowly, he reached across the table, his hand brushing against mine. The touch was light, tentative, but it sent a jolt of electricity through me. "Ryan," he said softly, his voice barely audible. "Can I ask you something?" I nodded, my breath catching as I waited for him to continue. "Do you ever feel like you're just going through the motions?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. "Like you're waiting for something to wake you up?" His words hit me like a punch to the gut, the truth of them cutting through me in a way I wasn't prepared for. I nodded again, my throat too tight to speak. "I felt that way for a long time," Alex said, his gaze dropping to where our hands nearly touched. "But then I met you, and I don't know. It's like something shifted." The train slowed as it approached the next station, the sound of the brakes screeching against the rails filling the car. Alex pulled his hand back, his expression unreadable as he leaned back in his seat. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "That was probably too much." "It wasn't," I said quickly, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "It wasn't too much." He looked up at me, his eyes wide with surprise, and I felt my heart pounding in my chest. The train came to a stop, the doors hissing open, but neither of us moved. The few remaining passengers shuffled off the car, their footsteps fading into the night, and we were left alone in the quiet. "Stay," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Don't get off yet." Alex's lips curved into a small smile, and he nodded, settling back into his seat. The doors closed, and the train lurched forward again, carrying us further into the night. The air between us felt charged, the silence heavy with everything we weren't saying. "Ryan," Alex said softly, his voice breaking the quiet. "I don't want to overstep, but—" "You're not," I interrupted, leaning forward slightly. "You're not overstepping." He hesitated, his eyes searching mine, and then he reached for my hand again, this time holding it firmly. The warmth of his touch sent a shiver through me, and I felt my chest tighten as I looked down at our joined hands. "I don't know where this is going," he said, his voice low but steady. "But I know I don't want it to end." I swallowed hard, my throat thick with emotion as I looked up at him. "Me neither." The train rocked gently, the motion pulling us closer together, and in that moment, surrounded by the quiet hum of the night, everything else faded away. There was only Alex, his hand in mine, and the quiet certainty that this was the beginning of something neither of us could deny. The train slid smoothly into the next station, its brakes sighing like an exhale. Passengers bustled on and off, a rush of movement and noise that seemed almost alien to the cocoon of stillness Alex and I had created in our corner of the car. His hand remained on mine, his grip steady, his eyes watching me with a quiet intensity that made my breath catch. The doors closed with a soft hiss, and we were moving again, the train slipping back into the city's embrace. I turned my hand slightly, letting my fingers intertwine with his. The contact was deliberate, an unspoken acknowledgement of everything we'd been circling around since the moment we met. Alex's lips curved into a small smile, and he glanced down at our joined hands before looking back up at me. "I didn't expect this," he said softly, his voice almost lost beneath the hum of the train. "Neither did I admitted, my thumb brushing against his. "But I'm not complaining." His smile widened, and for a moment the tension between us eased, replaced by something lighter, something that made my chest feel warm and full. But the quiet didn't last long. The train hit a sharp curve, the sudden motion tilting us closer together. My shoulder brushed against his, and I felt a spark of heat where our bodies touched. Alex didn't pull away. Instead, he turned slightly, his gaze searching mine. "Ryan," he said, his voice low, almost hesitant. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything," I said, the word coming out before I could think twice. He hesitated, his brow furrowing slightly. "What are you looking for? I mean, with this, with me?" The question caught me off guard, and for a moment I didn't know how to respond. I'd been so caught up in the pull between us, the unspoken connection, that I hadn't stopped to think about where it was leading. But as I looked at him, his eyes filled with both hope and uncertainty. The answer came to me like a whisper. "Something real," I said softly, something that doesn't feel like just going through the motions. His expression softened and he nodded, as if my words had settled something inside him. "Me too," he said. "I've been running on autopilot for so long, I almost forgot what it felt like to want something. Someone." The train rocked again, the motion pulling us closer until our faces were just inches apart. I could feel the warmth of his breath, see the faint stubble along his jaw, and my heart pounded in my chest as I realized how close we were to crossing a line that couldn't be undone. "Alex," I murmured, my voice barely audible. He didn't respond, not with words. Instead, he leaned in, his lips brushing against mine in a kiss so soft it felt like a question. I froze for half a heartbeat, the world around us falling away. And then I leaned into him, my hand tightening on his as I kissed him back. The moment stretched, the quiet hum of the train the only sound as our lips moved together, tentative at first but growing bolder with every second. His free hand cupped my face, his touch warm and steady, and I felt myself melt into him, my heart racing as the walls I'd built around myself crumbled. When we finally pulled apart, we were both breathing heavily, our foreheads resting together as we tried to catch our breath. His hand still held mine, his thumb brushing small, soothing circles against my skin. "I've wanted to do that since the first time I saw you," Alex admitted, his voice rough but full of sincerity. "Why didn't you?" I asked, my own voice trembling with emotion. He smiled softly, his eyes meeting mine. "I didn't know if you'd want me to." "I do," I said firmly, the words coming out stronger than I expected. "I do, Alex." The train began to slow, the announcement for my stop crackling through the speakers. For a moment, I considered staying on, letting the train carry us further into the night, but Alex must have seen the hesitation in my eyes. "Go," he said gently, his hand releasing mine. "I'll see you again." I nodded, my chest tightening as I stood and grabbed my bag. As the train came to a stop, I turned back to him, my heart pounding. "Alex?" "Yeah?" "I'm glad it's you." His smile was soft but full of warmth, and it stayed with me as I stepped off the train and into the cool night air. The days that followed were a blur of anticipation and uncertainty. I couldn't stop thinking about him, replaying the moment on the train over and over in my mind. His voice, his touch, the way he'd looked at me. It all felt so vivid, so real. But with each passing day, doubt began to creep in. What if it had been a one-time thing? What if I never saw him again? A week passed before I found him again. It was another late-night train, the car nearly empty as I stepped on, my eyes scanning the rows of seats. And there he was, sitting near the back, his head resting against the window, his eyes closed. I hesitated for a moment, my heart racing as I watched him. He looked peaceful, his face softened in sleep, and I felt a pang of longing so strong it almost took my breath away. Slowly, I made my way to his seat, sliding in across from him. His eyes fluttered open, and when he saw me, a slow, sleepy smile spread across his face. "Ryan," he said softly, his voice warm and familiar. "I was hoping I'd see you." I smiled, my chest feeling lighter than it had in days. "You looked like you were having a good dream." "I was," he said, his eyes never leaving mine, "but this is better." And just like that, the tension that had been building between us since the day we met dissolved, replaced by something quieter, something certain. We talked for hours, the train carrying us further into the night, and when he reached for my hand, I let him take it, knowing that whatever came next, we'd face it together. The train hummed beneath us, a rhythmic vibration that seemed to sync with the pulse of energy between our joined hands. Alex's thumb traced idle circles against my skin, a small, grounding gesture that made it impossible to think of anything but him. His eyes stayed on mine, warm and unguarded, as if he'd been waiting for this moment as long as I had. "So," he began, his voice low, teasing, "do you always take late trains hoping for serendipity? Or is it just my lucky night?" I laughed softly. the sound breaking the quiet cocoon we'd built. "Your lucky night," I said, though my tone carried more weight than I'd intended. "I didn't think I'd see you again." "You didn't?" His smile widened, but there was a flicker of something serious in his eyes. "I couldn't stop thinking about you, Ryan. I wasn't going to let this end with just one kiss." Heat rushed to my cheeks and I glanced away, my thoughts racing. His honesty was disarming, peeling back layers I hadn't realized I'd built around myself. I wasn't used to this, someone being so direct, so certain, but with Alex, it didn't feel overwhelming. It felt right. "I thought about you too," I admitted, my voice quieter now. "Every day since." His hand tightened on mine, just for a moment, a silent acknowledgement of everything we weren't saying. The train curved sharply, tilting us closer together, and I felt his knee press against mine under the table. The contact was small, almost incidental, but it sent a wave of warmth through me that made my breath hitch. "I've been waiting for another chance," Alex said, his voice soft but insistent. "To see if this thing, whatever it is, feels as real to you as it does to me." "It does," I said before I could second-guess myself. "It's real, Alex. I don't know what it means yet, but it's real." For a moment, neither of us spoke, the air between us thick with anticipation. His eyes flicked to my lips just for a second, and I felt my chest tighten. The train slowed, pulling into a dimly lit station, and the speakers crackled with the announcement of the next stop. I tensed, half expecting Alex to pull back, but he didn't. Instead, he leaned closer, his hand still holding mine, his gaze unwavering. "Your stop?" he asked, his voice a quiet murmur that sent a shiver through me. "No," I said, shaking my head. "Not yet." The train doors closed with a soft hiss, and we were moving again. The car nearly empty now. Alex's hand slipped from mine, but only so he could reach across the small table, brushing his fingers lightly against my jaw. His touch was tentative, as if he were waiting for me to pull away, but I didn't. I couldn't. "Ryan," he said, my name a quiet exhale on his lips. "Can I?" "Yes," I interrupted, my voice trembling. "Yes." That was all the encouragement he needed. He leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to stop him, but I didn't move. His lips met mine in a kiss that was soft at first, cautious, but as I responded, he deepened it, his hand sliding to the back of my neck. The world outside the train blurred into nothing, the lights and motion fading into the background as I lost myself in him. His other hand found my knee, his touch steady, grounding, as if anchoring us to this moment. My own hands moved instinctively, one finding his shoulder, the other slipping into his hair. He made a soft sound against my lips, a low hum of approval that sent a rush of heat through me. When we finally broke apart, our foreheads resting together, we were both breathing heavily. Alex's hand remained on my knee, his thumb brushing back and forth in a soothing motion. His eyes searched mine, a mixture of vulnerability and determination shining in their depths. "I've wanted to do that since the day we met," he admitted, his voice rough but full of emotion. "I just didn't know if you'd let me." "I wanted it too," I said, my voice barely audible. "I've been waiting for this." The corners of his mouth lifted in a soft smile, and he leaned back slightly, his hand slipping from my knee but not going far. "I don't want to rush this," he said, his tone serious. "I want to get it right." "You are," I said without hesitation. "You're getting it right, Alex." His shoulders relaxed, and he let out a soft breath as if my words had eased a weight he'd been carrying. "Good," he said quietly, "because I don't think I've ever wanted anything more." The train slowed again, the announcement for another station breaking the quiet, and Alex glanced out the window. When he looked back at me, his expression was unreadable. "Come with me," he said, the words sudden but not rushed. "Get off at the next stop. Let's figure this out." My heart leapt at the suggestion, but doubt crept in almost immediately. "Alex," I don't— No pressure, he said quickly, his hand covering mine again. But I don't want to spend another week wondering if I'll see you. I don't want to waste this. His honesty hit me like a punch to the chest, and I felt my resolve crumble. He was right. Whatever this was, it was worth chasing. I nodded, a small smile tugging at my lips. Okay, I said. Let's do it. The train pulled into the station, and Alex stood, grabbing his bag and holding out a hand to me. I took it without hesitation, letting him guide me out of the car and onto the platform. The cool night air hit me immediately, but his hand in mine kept me grounded, the warmth of his touch anchoring me to the moment. We walked in silence, the city unfolding around us in a blur of lights and shadows. Alex led the way, his grip on my hand firm but gentle, and I followed without question, trusting him completely. The tension between us was palpable, a quiet anticipation that made my pulse race with every step. When we finally stopped, it was in a quiet corner of a nearby park, the noise of the city fading into the background. Alex turned to face me, his hands finding my shoulders as he searched my eyes. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice soft but insistent. "Because I don't want to mess this up, Ryan. Not with you." "I'm sure," I said, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions racing through me. "I'm all in, Alex." He smiled then, a genuine, relieved smile that made my chest ache. "Good," he said quietly, "because I don't think I could stop now, even if I tried." Alex's words hung in the air, heavy with meaning and raw with honesty. The quiet park around us felt almost suspended in time, the distant hum of the city reduced to a faint whisper. His hands slid from my shoulders to my arms, his touch deliberate and unhurried, as if he were grounding both of us in the moment. "I've been searching for something real," he said softly, his eyes locked on mine. "And now that I've found it, I don't want to let it go." His confession made my breath catch. There was something in the way he said it, a quiet vulnerability that stripped away all pretense. I felt my chest tighten, the weight of his words settling deep inside me. "You won't lose it," I whispered, my voice trembling but certain. "You won't lose me." A soft exhale escaped him, and his lips curved into a faint, relieved smile. "Ryan," he murmured, his hand lifting to brush against my jaw. His thumb grazed my skin, warm and steady, and I leaned into his touch without thinking, my heart pounding in my chest. "Alex," I said, his name a quiet exhale on my lips. His eyes searched mine, his hand sliding to the back of my neck as he stepped closer. The space between us disappeared, and his forehead rested against mine, our breaths mingling in the cool night air. The intensity of his presence made my knees feel weak, and I gripped the front of his jacket instinctively, holding on to him like he was the only solid thing in the world. "I need to know," he whispered, his voice barely audible, "what this means to you." I swallowed hard, my mind racing as I tried to find the right words. "It means everything," I admitted, my voice thick with emotion. "I don't know how else to say it." His lips twitched into a small, almost shy smile, and he pulled back just enough to meet my gaze. "That's all I needed to hear," he said softly. And then he kissed me. The world seemed to tilt as his lips met mine, the soft pressure igniting something inside me that I hadn't even realized I was holding back. His kiss was slow at first, tentative, but when I responded, my hands sliding up to tangle in his hair, he deepened it, his movements growing more confident, more insistent. I felt myself melting into him, the heat of his body against mine chasing away the chill of the night. His hands gripped my waist, steady and sure, as if he were afraid to let me go. The kiss was electric, overwhelming, and yet it felt completely natural, like we'd been building toward this moment from the second we met. When we finally broke apart, both of us breathing heavily, Alex rested his forehead against mine again, his hands still holding me firmly. "You're incredible," he said, his voice rough but filled with awe. I can't believe I almost let you walk away that first night." "I'm glad you didn't," I said, my lips curving into a smile. "I've never felt like this before, Alex. I didn't even think it was possible." His hands slid up to cup my face, his thumbs brushing against my cheeks as he looked at me with an intensity that made my breath catch. "It's possible," he said firmly, "and it's happening. Right here. Right now." I nodded, unable to find the words to respond, and he leaned in again, his lips capturing mine in a kiss that was slower this time, more deliberate. His hands moved to my back, pulling me closer, and I felt myself give in completely, surrendering to the moment. The park around us seemed to fade away, the quiet hum of the city dissolving into nothingness as we lost ourselves in each other. His touch was everywhere, gentle yet insistent, exploring and memorizing every inch of me. My own hands roamed over his chest, his shoulders, the sharp line of his jaw, as if I were trying to commit him to memory. When we finally pulled apart, the air between us felt charged, heavy with everything we'd left unsaid. Alex's hands rested on my hips, his grip steady, and he smiled at me. Soft, genuine, and filled with a warmth that made my chest ache. "Come back with me," he said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want this night to end." I hesitated for only a second before nodding, the weight of the moment settling over me. "Okay," I said softly. "Lead the way." Alex's apartment was small but cozy, filled with the faint scent of coffee and books. The walls were lined with shelves, each one crammed with paperbacks and trinkets, and the soft glow of a lamp in the corner bathed the room in a warm, golden light. He set his keys on the counter, glancing back at me with a small nervous smile. "Make yourself comfortable," he said, his voice softer now, almost shy. I nodded, stepping further into the room and taking in the details that felt so uniquely him. A stack of records sat by an old turntable in the corner, and a well-worn armchair faced a window that overlooked the city skyline. It was intimate, personal, and it made me feel closer to him in a way I hadn't expected. "Ryan," Alex said, his voice breaking through my thoughts. I turned to see him standing a few feet away, his hands shoved into his pockets, his expression unreadable. I need you to know that this isn't casual for me. Whatever this is, it's real, and I want it to mean something." I stepped closer, my chest tightening at the vulnerability in his words. "It does mean something," I said, my voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. "It means everything." His shoulders relaxed, and he let out a quiet breath, his lips curving into a small, relieved smile. "Good," he said softly, "because I don't think I've ever felt this way about anyone before." The weight of his confession hung between us, and I felt myself drawn to him like a magnet. I closed the distance between us, my hands finding his face as I kissed him, pouring everything I couldn't put into words into that single moment. He responded immediately, his arms wrapping around me as he pulled me closer, his body warm and solid against mine. The kiss deepened, growing more urgent, and I felt myself losing track of everything except the feel of him, the press of his lips, the way his hands moved over my back, the quiet sounds he made that sent shivers racing down my spine. When we finally broke apart, both of us breathing heavily, Alex rested his forehead against mine, his hands sliding to my waist. "Stay," he murmured, his voice rough but filled with quiet hope. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, my voice steady. "Not tonight. Not ever."